The Journal of Posthuman Studies. That's another achievement, sort of another thing which grew out of, in the end it developed out of the entire Beyond Humanism conference series, which started in 2009. First I started the book series dedicated to that field of studies, and then we developed the need to have a journal together in close cooperation with EVA Women's University Sangju-Shin. Where is he? Oh, here he is. He'll also be talking later on. And now we will first, I have the pleasure to introduce Martine Rosblatt, who's a wonderful, amazing person, and she's a great tech innovator, and she'll directly be talking to us from the United States, giving a sort of inaugural presentation concerning the need for posthuman studies. I will let me get connected to her. So, I just announced you, we're ready.
Okay, thanks, Stefan, and thank you everybody who's attending the Beyond Humanism, 9th Beyond Humanism conference in Rome. My remarks today are first of all a tribute to the Meta-Humanist Manifesto by Deval and Stefan, and I think there are a few comments and principles in this manifesto which should guide our thinking moving beyond humanism. First is that, and this is a quote from the manifesto, that the body is an immanent, embodied process of becoming that does not necessarily end up in defined forms or identities, but may unfold into endless amorphogenesis. This is a brilliant restatement of a perspective that was well enunciated by Teilhard de Chardin in the last century, but has been brought into more of a critical thinking framework by Deval and Sorgner, and completely informs my own thinking. They go on in paragraph 2 to observe that bodies have, quote, no ultimate exteriority, close quote, but, quote, gravitate around provisional noble points that account for an immanent perspectivism. And then in paragraphs 3 and 4, observe that a, quote, politics of movement, quote, is based upon freeing, quote, technologies of becoming, close quote, from a, quote, biopolitical metasystem of control, and, quote, stressing the importance of movement versus identity. And I think this is the main point about Beyond Humanism. We've been trapped too long in a kind of hyper-individualism born of the Renaissance that has led us to ignore and forget the fundamental processes of relationism, which is very well understood in the meta-humanistic framework. I'd also like to observe a couple of points from that I have learned based upon this teachings in the manifesto. First, a realization that the human genome, an extrapolation of which all of us are, is but a perspective nodal itself in the global genome, which I would spell X-E-N-O-M-E. And in fact, each of us is much more xenome than genome. Even the very cells on our that comprise what we consider to be our individualism are in fact 90% completely alien to our own DNA, but are opportunistic bacteria. And the exchange of chemicals through the olfactory system and sensations through the nervous system, all of this makes us part and parcel of a much larger zoonotic environment than our genomic environment. But I think this leads, in fact, to a strong support for routine, anonymous surveillance of the global genome, including the human genome, and that this is no kind of invasion of a privacy, artificial constructed privacy, but in fact this is just the self-awareness of our global biome and a way of keeping our own global biome in its optimal state of health. So that, for example, people everywhere should be receiving fundamental basic health care. In the World Health Organization meaning of healthcare being not just an absence of disease, but a comprehensive sense of well-being and feeling of satisfaction, which includes both psychological and physiological surveillance and then ultimately interactions. And this is the anonymous surveillance information that comes from this is nothing that people would be mandated in a totalitarian, obligatory sense to participate in, but would be something that would just be an outcome of the attractiveness of people everywhere wanting to access these basic healthcare services. I think that ultimately, as we provide basic healthcare services everywhere, informed by the knowledge of routine of anonymous global genomic surveillance of all sorts, we will achieve a kind of meta-human tolerance that will itself be indicative of integrative global health. Vaccines, maternal support, nutrition, psychological and social support. All of this is part of what makes all of us in a relational, beyond humanistic sense, healthier, happier, and a more vibrant living global being. Ultimately, we get ourselves to the Teilhard de Chardin concept of a noospherical cognition of health that mandates community-wide identification and beginning to see our individualism as something which are blips and spikes upon a much more global, zenotic, and noospheric reality. I'd like to conclude with a few basic statements or almost poetic statements that I think summarize these points, and much of this is informed by Alan Watts, who also had this very same sensitivity that Stefan and colleagues have expressed so well in the Metahumanist Manifesto. So these statements are first, that the ocean waves as the genomes. So, of course, we have separate genomes. Each of us have a unique genomic expression, and it even changes during our life. But that no more carves us out from the entire mass of humanity than do the waves in the ocean carve the waves out from the mass of the oceanic sea. One is part and parcel of the other. Second, that waves move through the ocean as genomes move through the genome. We cannot think of our genome as some static thing to be protected forever, but it is something that is relational and dynamic and changing continuously in interaction with everybody on the earth at any one point in time, interaction with everything that is part of the earth, and in interaction with whatever our environment is as we move off of the earth into space through time. Third concept I want to share is that waves relate to all water as genomes relate to all genomics. So again, we need to think of ourselves as part and parcel of a global being, and a global being that is in the act of becoming and relating constantly to each other and to everything that is both biological as well as digital, cognitive, noospheric in our environment. Fourth, tolerance is the movement of relation. Relation is what underlies metahumanism, is what underlies the difference between old school, post-Renaissance humanism and our new critical understanding of transhumanism or beyond humanism, this tolerance is based upon a welcoming of an interaction amongst all genomes, xenomes, and the noosphere. My final observation is that our very human genome that we each have today, and we are together in this meeting as a result of, is but a nodal perspective that we see right now of eons, countless ages of xenomic tolerance. It's all about xenomic tolerance, and it's all not about genomic preservation. Thank you, Stefan, so much for giving me this opportunity to talk with the 9th Beyond Humanism Conference in Rome today. Thank you very much.
Oh, many thanks. It's really my pleasure. Conference in the future.
I want to be there. Thanks.
Wonderful. Have a wonderful evening. Bye. So, this words really make me happy, actually. Yes, so now we're coming to the announcement of the journal, and all the support and all that working on post-human issues wouldn't really work out without the appropriate support of the institution you're working at. And here you really got the wonderful support of the Vice President and Dean, Mary Merber, and she'll be presenting now, giving a short presentation on the Journal of Posthuman Studies and the relevance of these fields of studies.
Well, after you follow that, it's probably the best thing to be short. I'm not referring to my height. So good afternoon and welcome to John Cabot University. I'm the Vice President and Dean of Academics, and it's with the greatest pleasure to be here to take part in the launch of the Journal of Posthuman Studies and congratulate Stephen Sogner, James Hughes, and Sancho Shin. A round of applause for this. As a liberal arts university that's been in Rome for nearly 50 years, we've been struggling to survive in our first 20 years. We probably should have died 1,000 deaths, but what has always kept us going and kept the heart of the institution here is the faculty, the scholarship, the discussions, the building of new ideas here in Rome, in a part of the world where we feel we have a very important mission to play. When I first became dean, I didn't know what to do. This was 10 years ago. John Cabot was smaller than it is today. And I asked the dean of American University of Cairo, who had been there 30 years, and I said, can you give me some advice? And he said, Mary, the four walls of a university are where you can ask any question, have any dialogue, explore any difficult area without killing each other. And that is a patrimony we have here at John Cabot. Conferences such as this is a delight for us, but also an important part of our mission here in Rome. After our 40th year, we started to thrive. We grew up, we're doing well, and as a result, we're able to host and have at John Cabot some fantastic faculty as Stefan. Every time I see him, I'm so glad this conference has started, because it's like giving birth, waiting for 9 months. This baby to come with this expectant father walking around. So we're happy about that. We're also, on a more serious note, strongly supportive of the cutting-edge, multidisciplinary inquiry into what it is to be human in our age of rapid technological change. The new range of answers to the questions provide important new questions into how we ought to treat each other, how we can best live together, now and in the future. We wish you the greatest joy and success as you make critical contributions to promoting our capacity to further and evolve. And all I can say is this is a happy time. We're so glad you're here. I hope you have a wonderful conference, and congratulations on this new birth.
for giving me this wonderful chance to present your journal. Actually, I assume that you already know much about journal, so I'd like to tell my feelings about this journal and why I have been involved in this project. Actually, it was 2011 when I first met Stefan. That was the Beyond Humanism conference at Berlin. At that time, I was looking for kind of a new research agenda for my institution. My institution, Institution for Humanities, is carrying out 10 years kind of the new project funded by Korean government at that time. But we needed some kind of new research agenda to respond to global changes or technological changes or what future is coming, something like that. At that time, I met Stefan and I was passionate by the human enhancement or transhumanism or all those stuff. So since then, our institution became a leading institute for posthuman studies in Korea, and we have more than 10 scholars working on that field, including human enhancement, transhumanism, critical posthumanism, or nowadays AI problems, AI ethics, all those kind of stuff. Then, as a process, not just, became a Korean leading institute, also we want to be a kind of the worldwide renowned institution in this field. So we working together to make a new journal. Actually, it was a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it took 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Finally, this came out, and I'm very grateful and thankful and very honored to have this chance. Thank you very much.
And we really became friends, as you know. It's more than just a cooperation. We have regular contact.
Became a very close friend in life.
Yes. Just because I know we're all waiting for the pizza reception on the main terrace. So just the final word, because that's important. Sort of that's how the first issue was put together. We want to keep it all balanced. Sort of in a fair. We have got a contribution by Rosie Braidotti, sort of standing for critical posthumanism. One by Julian Savalescu, more close to transhumanism. We've got a contribution by an artist, by Stellar. Then actually by an engineer, Kevin Warwick. Then by a leading philosopher, Wolfgang Welsch. And so I've also, contributed a little piece. And so we all, to show the entire realm of questions we're dealing with, and all the great variety of perspectives and traditions we try to take into consideration. So work hard at your articles. Please submit them to the journals in order to really make that the main place for posthuman research. And now please let's celebrate together. Have a wonderful pizza reception up on the main terrace, and I'm looking forward to having a drink with all of you.